Okay, everybody, we're here today to talk about different preparations for winter, our winter apothecary. I hope everybody has started an apothecary, and if you feel like it's overwhelming, you start with one plant, one remedy, one way to use that plant. Many plants can be used many different ways, so that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Suzanne. I'm with Simple Homestead Living. I'm here at Holly Drake's house with Wild Blessings, and Holly and I are doing our winter apothecary. So let's start with a few things that you will need in order to forage your plants, to process them when you get them home, whether you're growing them or not. My book, Wild Herb Gardening, is all about getting these wild plants close to you in safe places to forage. So that's my main goal, is making everything accessible to you. If you could not leave your home or your yard or your homestead, how would you get these plants? This is my book. It's available on my website, Simple Homestead Living. So I'm going to sit it right there. So thank you. The second one will be out in 2025. There's 45 plants in this book, and the next 45 will be out. I'm working on it now. So everybody who is harvesting your own plants, and by the way, you do not have to get out there and climb mountains, go through fields to harvest your own plants. If you purchase herbs, that's fine, but I would like you to become familiar with the plant before you actually consume it. Or if you consume it, that's fine, but have a way to learn about that actual plant. I want you to smell it. I want you to carefully taste it, spit it out. I'm not talking about gobble it down. Taste it to see if it's bitter, taste it to see if it's pungent or sweet. Is it an onion? Is it, by the way, who knows how to tell wild onions? They taste like onions, or they smell like onions. If they don't smell like an onion, it's not an onion, and it could be toxic. So just be aware of that. There are certain things you need to learn about a plant. If you're starting out with one plant and you are looking for it in the field and you see another plant, that doesn't mean you can't learn about that one too. So you go at your pace. If you come home with 10 plants and you want to learn all 10, if you can comprehend that, by all means do 10. But I strongly urge you to learn a little bit about one plant, learn a little bit about another plant, and then go back to that first or second plant and learn more. So this is an evolving process. You never learn everything about every plant that you in one sitting. It's just almost impossible. So some of the things that I want to talk to you about that I keep in my truck. I do have a pickup truck. I have a foraging bag in there. I have a belt that I'll put on. I have a pack. I have a backpack that I'll carry depending on how far I'm going to go. If I'm doing a lot of walking, I'll usually take a pack with lots of bags in it. You get permission to be on the land because bad things can happen if you're trespassing. And be aware that there are certain areas that there are fines, like federal lands. If you don't have permission, there are fines for taking things out. So I'm certainly not telling anybody to go on federal land or state land, private land, anything like that. But when you have your foraging areas that you can go into, I use these tools. And the number one tool is I probably have 3 sets of some kind of shear in my truck, in my vehicle at any given time, because these are so handy to just take and clip, 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 and you've got your bundle that you're going to take home. They usually will have a catch to keep them in a small place. Another thing, this came in handy yesterday, is this is a pocket boy. It's by Silky. These are not cheap, but there's nothing better in my opinion. These are, it comes in a case. It's got a safety latch. You're gonna need stuff like this for saplings, for bark, things like that. And then I can also keep a pair of loppers, the long with for certain things that this won't get to, or if I'm just getting twigs or branches, you can certainly use a pair of long-handled loppers. I have a ratcheted set and a long-handle set that I keep in my toolbox. Things in your kitchen, I would strongly urge you to collect some funnels. Canning funnels with the opening really helps when you sit something down in a jar and that opening, pretend the stem's not there, but that opening's like that, you can just stuff your herbs in it. You'll want filters. These are awesome filters that Holly has here. This is a mesh, like a silk mesh. This one is a little less fine, but still does quite a fantastic job. And then, of course, the regular sieves that you have in your kitchen. Great. I will take those sieves, put it in a larger funnel like this, set that sieve in it, and then I can just pour my tinctures into that when I'm finished straining. Like, for example, if this were full of herb, I could just pour it into that strainer and shake it, let it sit, let it strain. And then you can also use cheesecloth if you're going to squeeze out that herb, especially if you've ground an herb or you have a lot of leafy petal type material. That's called your mark when you've actually put it into the tincture. But when you want to squeeze out your mark, cheesecloth or nut bags, indispensable. I love nut bags because you can empty them out, rinse them out, and reuse them. They're cloth and they're very sturdy, very strong. They use them to make nut milk, and so when you get the nut pulp, you can just squeeze that out. So I would strongly suggest you collect things one at a time. That's going to make things easy for you. I have funnels like this, about twice as big as that, all the way down to a tincture bottle funnel, which is about that big, and they're wonderful. So, all right, so let's talk about making. We're going to talk about some wintertime herbs and how we can use them for our wintertime apothecary. The first one I'm going to talk about is a tea. This is your wintertime wellness right here. White pine, or really any type of pine, is going to be your vitamin C source. When they tell you, oh, it has 5 times the vitamin C of an orange. An orange seems to be the standard, but what they don't tell you is that RDA of an orange, that includes the peel. That includes consuming the peel, plus the pith, the bitter part, plus the pulp. So what do we do when we peel an orange for our kids? We clean off all the pith. Well, that's where the vitamin C is. So that orange peel, and unfortunately because of pesticides and things, we have an issue with a lot of peels these days. Just be aware of that you're only getting a portion of that RDA when you eat an orange. This, however, is going to be your absolute best source of vitamin C. And not only vitamin C, you're going to get shikimic acid when you make this into a tea. So what I do, and in some places this is an obscene gesture, but I'm just using it for a measure, this amount of pine needles, when you pull them off like this and you fill this amount up, that's how many you will need for a quart of simmering water. And that's a tasty tea. That's your RDA of vitamin C. Actually, it's plenty more than your RDA of vitamin C. When you drink a couple of cups of this, you can put honey in it. You can put it in with other herbs as well. You can put rose hips, which is this. Rose hips are the part of the rose that actually held the petals, the hip. So that's where the flower comes from. And then this is left on the bush. This is a multiflora rose that is rampant here in North Carolina. It's just everywhere. So it would be hard not to be able to find these. This is rose hips, multiflora. This is multiflora rose. If you would like to pass that around so you can see it. Yeah, there's a few thorns on it there, but those make a wonderful tea as well. One of the things you can do with the tea, you can also infuse a vinegar, this wonderful with pine needles. When you do vinegars, you don't have to just necessarily take a shot of fire cider. Fire cider or any tea, or excuse me, any vinegar like that makes a wonderful salad dressing, makes an awesome marinade for meat, chicken, fish, what have you. Even to pour it over potatoes or wild roots that you're gonna roast in the oven. Pour that vinegar over them or let it marinate in that for just a few, 30 minutes or so, and then put those in your baking dish and bake them. You're getting your dose of fire cider that way. So you don't have to just down it, take a shot and down it. You can get it multiple ways when you're making your vinegars. One that I particularly like, and we're going to make today, is pine and barberry. Barberry is a berberine source. Berberine is yellow. It smells like medicine, just like conventional medicine. You'll find berberine in golden seal. That's the most common berberine, but it also has hydrastine, hydrastine, hydrastine. Hydrastine can cause some stomach upset for some people. So besides that, it's very endangered. It's hard to find golden seal in the wild because it's just been depleted. And by the way, I strongly, strongly encourage everybody, if you're going to be foraging, just be aware that if you're foraging in a public place, probably somebody's going to come along behind you and forage again. So if you're taking half or 2/3 or even all of what you see, or if you're taking 2/3 and somebody comes behind you and takes the rest, that plant can't replenish. So if you're in a public place foraging, only take about 10%. If it's very plentiful, if it's something like dandelions or something like that, that you're not going to have to worry about it being depleted, take as much as you want, but just be aware that if it's a plant that is endangered, like golden seal, you're risking obliterating that out. We were talking earlier about Aurelia spinosa. I would almost be positive it's up here, but people hate that plant, so it may have been eradicated in this area. That doesn't mean it can't come back. Plant it on your own property where nobody's going to reach and grab it because it does have thorns, the same as, say, a rose bush or something like that. You would put it where people are not going to walk right by it. So the same with barberry, because it has this tiny little thorn there, very sharp thorn, and when you get these little thorns in your finger, it kind of stings and it gets real achy, which is odd because this plant is wonderful for skin. But that's a defense mechanism. When you have a thorn on a plant, that's its defense mechanism. It may taste bad, so other plants won't get eaten because they taste bad. But that's this plant's defense mechanism. And this Chinese barberry is actually invasive. So when you see the berries, I have them in my yard. I have them all in the woods around my house, but I don't cut them out, because this is such good medicine for so many things. This berberine, it's good for diabetes, it's good for knocking out gram-negative, it's good for knocking out gram-positive. They're giving berberine capsules now for diabetes and for other issues as well, high blood pressure, several different things. H. pylori, which is stomach ulcers. So if you have a leaky gut, if you have irritable bowel, all of these things, the berberine in this plant, the berberine is also in Mahonia, which can be harvested in the wintertime. That's leatherleaf Mahonia or Oregon grape. The West Coast variety is actually the Oregon grape. Here it's called leatherleaf Mahonia, and it looks like a holly. And about February, March, it has this beautiful burst of yellow flowers at the top, and they taste like a bitter honey. I mean, they are just fabulous. And they smell like grapes. It's just a wonderful plant. I have one right by my back door, and I had people, Suzanne, why are you planting Mahonia? Because the leaves stick you. I planted it right by the back door so I could reach and get the berries every day while they're in season, and I eat 1 or 2 berries a day.
We're drinking it for lunch.
Yes, we're going to drink some Mahonia for lunch today. This is barberry with the berberine, but there's 5 plants that have that berberine. Very, very important to get to know berberine. It's going to be your ally for a lot of things, not only in wintertime. Berberine, let me give you the plants, but this is the one we're going to use today, but the plants will be barberry. This is the Chinese variety. And the wood on this plant, if you were to cut the stem off down at the bottom, it would be bright yellow, bright black fluorescent yellow, and smell like antiseptic, like a hospital cleaner. I mean, it smells very antiseptic, and there's that much potency in that plant. And they used to say you would have to dig up the roots. That's not the case. These plants have medicine all through them, so you can cut stems back all the way down. You know how you would cut your raspberries? You can cut that plant down and it'll shoot right back. So when it gets unruly or the branches die out, just cut them out, use them for medicine. Get in the habit of trimming it back and using those trimmings. You can just stick them in a tincture in an alcohol. You don't have to take all the barberries off. You can use this entire thing. So one of the remedies we're going to make today, we're going to use barberry, and we're just going to chop it up. We're not going to take the berries off because there's medicine in the stem.
What about the toothpaste?
Yes, you can put this in a toothpaste. That's down the line, but this would we'll put this in a toothpaste as well. Today, yeah. All right, so another thing that you can do, the vinegar, we're gonna put pine and barberry. Pine, remember, is shikimic acid and vitamin C, and the barberry is going to be berberine. Now, small amounts of berberine daily throughout the winter, you can use that as a preventive. Now, my mentor has a thing, it's not preventative, it's preventive. So just a little joke there for you. But as your preventive, you can take sassafras and make a tea with that sassafras. Put some berberine in it, which would be yellow root if you can find it, barberry, mahonia stem. Remember we talked, I don't think I gave you the 5 plants, did I? Berberine, mahonia, or Oregon grape. Look that up on your phone later so that you'll know what the plant looks like. Golden seal is number 3. What's number 4? Yellow root, Xanthorrhiza simplicissima. That's a long name, but just be aware that in some areas they call golden seal will also be called yellow root, but it's the Xanthorrhiza simplicissima. Great place you'll find it is along creek banks, because it really will help hold the creek together. And if you could take a slice out, or say the creek gets washed and it exposes the roots, it looks like a plate of spaghetti. I mean, those roots will be 8 feet long. They'll be that size. So when you go to pull up the plant, it'll usually break within a foot. That's fine, because that whole plant, and I'll use the leaves in teas, things like that, especially wintertime teas. But with your and twin leaf is the other one that has berberine in it. Is that 5? Okay. Sorry, I kept getting off that list. But the sassafras, the way you use sassafras as a preventive, you'll make your tea with your sassafras roots. They smell like root beer. Use the sassafras and berberine and simmer that together. You can sweeten it, and then you'll just take a swig, a little half a cup of that tea at night. Helps with sleep. It's your flu preventive, cold preventive, because you're getting a small dose of that berberine daily. Now, I do suggest when you're taking berberine not to take it every single day. If you're taking it for diabetes or gum ulcers, or you have skin irritation like psoriasis or something like that, I would suggest taking a small break. Even elderberry, if you're taking elderberry every single day, your body needs a break. Take it a week, off a week. Take it 5 days, off 2. Set your plan, but you don't need to take that every day. Your immune system needs to stand on its own. And you're using this as a boost, not dependent. Make sense? So if you're using it every single day, your immune system is going to get dependent on that. So take small breaks and let your immune system work on its own. So we're going to make the vinegar, which is pine and barberry, and that's going to be a preventive that we can take as well and use it in salad dressings, use it in cooking. Vinegar will brighten up a dish. So even if you're sauteing vegetables on the stove or you're boiling vegetables on the stove, put a little splash of vinegar in there, and always use an infused vinegar. I might have 10 different vinegars at any given time. Homemade vinegars made from fruits like peach peels or apple peels or strawberry hulls. By the way, the strawberry hulls make a great tea in the summertime. But whatever way you make your vinegar, even if you're infusing apple cider vinegar or wine vinegar. We often overlook wine vinegar, and it's actually just as healthy, if not more, because you're getting the resveratrol in the wine vinegar. So we'll make a vinegar there and use it in many different dishes. The quiche that we have today, we could drizzle a little bit of infused vinegar over it just to brighten up that dish. It's almost like a squeeze of lemon on vegetables. For a cough syrup, I would also use this barberry and cherry bark, and then I would add sumac to that. Sumac is, again, high in vitamin C, but it's not ascorbic acid. This is malic and gallic acid, very important nutrients for the body. Ascorbic acid is unfortunately made from GMO corn. If you're getting the white powder ascorbic acid to put in, like if you're canning or what have you, that's made from GMO corn. Malic acid, which is in sumac, is actually better for your body than ascorbic acid. And that's your high doses of vitamin C. Now, this is a precursor to vitamin C because you hear a lot about, if you boil your broccoli that's high in vitamin C, you're going to lose your vitamin C. Well, just drink the water, because the vitamin C is in the water. Just put that in the freezer and make a soup with it. This is a precursor to vitamin C, this malic and gallic acid. So is the pine a precursor. So boiling doesn't make it go away. Boiling might make it bitter, so it's often best to simmer. You bring the heat up barely to a boil and then let it simmer. And my teas will be more like infusions. I don't put a teaspoon of something in a cup. I'll plop it in, and my pots are full of plants, and I love a strong tea. That's not to say I don't like an infused water either, but I do in the wintertime. I want strong teas, so I might make a quart or two at a time, and it might have 2 or 3 cups of plant material in it. And I love to put cranberries and sumac berries and hibiscus, all of these plants, and plants I can find in the wintertime too. But I'll prepare those during the year and then add them to my winter plants like the pine. And the reason you want to get pine in the wintertime is, number one, it's available, but this is one of the plants that the nutrients actually are stronger after a frost. Hawthorn is another one that the berries are absolutely beautiful after a frost. They'll be kind of red, and that's a winter interest tree, a hawthorn. You'll find those at places like Home Depot or like your state or county offices, your county offices, things like that, because they'll use them in the landscape. When the leaves fall off of them, the leaves are beautiful, by the way, but when the leaves fall off, that's when hawthorn shines, is because the berries are still there, and the tree kind of goes out this way. It doesn't grow up straight, so it's real majestic. It kind of does this with the branches, and the berries hang on it, and it's in the Rosaceae family, the rose family. But if you look at those little, Holly, you have any?
In the fridge.
In the fridge. Whoops. If you look at hawthorn, this is hawthorn. I harvested this, and if you'll notice, there's twigs in here. The twigs are just as medicinal. I use all parts of the tree. I'm going to pass a couple of these around, let y'all look at them, and you tell me what that looks like. looks like cranberry. Does it look like maybe an apple? It's because it's cousin to an apple. It's cousin to, it's in the rose family. So rose buds, the rose hips, I think they're over there. If you look at them, compare it to that rose hip and look at it. They're cousins. So they're in that same Rosaceae family, the rose family. So we're gonna make, let's see, I was talking about the hawthorn. We're gonna make honey. Yeah, there we go. Run the next thing. Hawthorn, sumac, and pineapple honey. Now, if you wanted to add garlic to that, wouldn't that be a savory flavor? A lot of these things that we're talking about kind of has a fruity flavor, like all of these fruits we've just talked about. But if you add garlic to it, highly medicinal. You've just made a honey that you can drizzle over fish, or you can use with those vinegars, those infused vinegars, to make a marinade for steak or chicken or any type of meat, and the vegetables that we talked about as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. You're making your individual ingredients with these herbs, and then you can use them in cooking. Yeah, there we go.
This is her book where she describes all of this in great detail. Mm-hmm. She has a whole section on seasonings and flavors and stuff.
Yes, we have, there's many different recipes that you can do, and I tried to give you good ideas in this book, and you can expand on it in any ways. Even if you're taking something like your peach pits, you can make peach pit syrup or peach pit vinegar, and the peels make a wonderful jam. So, and that's not a wild food, but I'm just using that as an example for things that you are familiar with, and then broaden your horizons for the wild foods, the wild things that you find. Dandelions are absolutely fabulous to add into both a tea, a vinegar, and a honey. We just don't have time to talk about all those today. I'm just trying to give you ideas to get you started. And your kitchen is your own. These are your creations that I'm pushing you to do, because it's so much fun. You're having fun today. I'm having fun. It's so much fun to do it. So much fun to create them. And if you strain them out, when you strain these things out, dehydrate them and powder them and use them in your cooking. You can use them as a spice, as a seasoning. I have something, I call it my 40 ingredient seasoning, and practically everything that goes through my kitchen will wind up in that spice, especially garlic, especially wild ramps and wild onions, and even I'll put carrots and things in there too, but there'll be things like Queen Anne's lace. All of these things that just come through my kitchen will wind up in that spice at least a little bit. And I make big jugs of it and give it away when I have it. So I haven't made it in a couple years. So my supply is down to about half a quart. So it's the first of the year. As soon as things start popping up, ramps are usually the first thing I go and harvest. And man, I get the ramps and put them in my jar. So, all right, the next thing we can talk about is a cough syrup, or did we talk about a cough syrup? Cherry bark, and we'll peel some bark today, but also the barberry and sumac. Now, why would we add those to a cough syrup? The barberry is going to have our berberine to help with the antiviral, the viral load, to keep that down and try to eliminate any sickness that's coming on. Sumac's going to be high in the vitamin C, as well as other things. We certainly don't want to isolate out and just talk about the vitamin C, because there's a ton of nutrients in sumac. But the cherry is going to be soothing for a cough, for a sore throat, and then we have these other nutrients in there as well. Then we're also going to do an oxymel. Now we're going to go in a little different direction and use pokeberries. Pokeberries are a summertime find, but you preserve those and use them all winter because poke is absolutely wonderful. And no, it won't reach out and grab your children. I'm going to just pull out one of these. If you're not familiar with a poke. Isn't that pretty? I would encourage each one of you to take one of these and just let it melt in your mouth. Don't chew the seed. I'm sorry, was that okay, Holly? All right. Don't chew the seed. Just mince it in your mouth and swallow it whole. If you don't want to, if you're not comfortable, don't do it. Poke, when you're going to make an oxymel, poke is not only going to help with lymph, it's going to help with keep inflammation down. Inflammation is a huge killer in this country because it's just running rampant. Let me let you pick that up. Thank you. So when we help our lymph to move, when we use the lymph mover plants, it helps keep us healthy. So you can have this all winter in an oxymel, and an oxymel. Oh yeah.
And this is when you put it into the water.
Okay. Oxymel, what this is an oxymel, and the way you make an oxymel is these infused vinegars and these infused honeys. We put them together, and that makes a sweetened vinegar. Look at the color on that. Is that not beautiful? If you can hold it up. But it makes a wonderful tasting beverage. This would be almost like a syrup. I would put this in tonic water. I'm not fond of them either. I didn't tell you that up front. They're a little bit musky. If you're wondering, everybody on the camera, the students that are here, they all kind of went, you know. I've never enjoyed pokeberries. My grandmother used to make pokeberry jam, and she would put it with muscadines. So it was a good flavor then, and you're getting that resveratrol. So that's something that we enjoyed in the wintertime. But this oxymel, I would take that oxymel and pour it over into tonic water. You're getting your quinine. Have you heard quinine is good for certain pandemic flus to help prevent that? So I use tonic water. I don't drink soda except for tonic water. I will drink that, and I do a lot of kombucha instead. Man, I used to be a Diet Coke fiend, and I got off Diet Coke with kombucha because it was fizzy and it was refreshing, and I just craved it. I think I like that better than the flavor, but those bubbles, I needed those bubbles. Well, now I'll do tonic water with a syrup. It's even good with shagbark hickory. Holly's shagbark hickory syrup would be fabulous in a tonic water, to almost like a coffee drink, as a cold coffee. But the oxymels work really well that way because that vinegar has a little bit of the sparkle, the tartness, and then the honey is sweet. And the pokeberries are so good for inflammation. So keeping inflammation, it seems like our inflammation is higher in the wintertime because we're having heavy carbohydrates. If you eat with the seasons, you don't get a lot of green food in the wintertime. Now we can import food all the time, but if we're actually harvesting your food, looking for food in the wintertime, you're going to be depending on roots, nuts, twigs, and things like that to make soups and heavy stews and grasses and seeds and things to make those stews. So that's heavy food. But when you add oxymel, it helps keep that lymph moving, where the heavy food kind of makes things stagnant. We're also going to do an oil. We're talking about birch. There's a birch floating around here. There it is, right over there. I peeled a little bit of it so you could take a smell. Sweet birch, yellow birch, black birch. There's 2 or 3 different kinds that have the betulinic acid, and also wintergreen oil. This smells just like a wintergreen, and I think y'all smelled it earlier. We're just going to lay it right there. Yeah, I peeled a little earlier. We just cut this last night, so it's very fresh. You can use this oil as a liniment, sore muscles, sore joints. It has betulinic acid in it as well as salicin. Salicin is the precursor to aspirin, so you can use that topically. You can make this into a tea and drink it, but we're infusing an oil. We're gonna peel some more of this and have a bark peeling lesson on how to safely peel bark, because you're wanting the inner bark on this. On most every type of bark that you're going to peel, you're going to want the inner bark. not the outer bark, unless it's very thin. Trying to think, it's like some very young willow, like this, for example. It's actually the bark that we want, but I would not even attempt to peel this. I would just go ahead and clip up these tips, and even this part down here. I wouldn't peel that. I would just clip this up. If it's smaller than my finger, I'll just use the whole thing. But you have to adjust the inert material. So if you needed, for example, a pound of bark or half a pound of bark, and you have a total of a pound, you're only going to have about a half a pound that's actually the medicinal part, the cambium layer. You're going to have the other wood in there as well. So you just have to adjust a little bit. That's just a basic math. So does that make sense? You just have to adjust for this part, if you were going to use it on a piece that's this big. The wood part that would not have much medicine in it, you just have to adjust your ratio to take that into consideration. And there's very few plants that you couldn't use the whole twig if it's this size. There's I can't think of anything that you wouldn't use that, or that you couldn't use that. If you do peel it and get just your bark, that's great, but sometimes you just have to make an adjustment.
And also the sap is wonderful. It's almost like a sweet water.
Birch sap in the spring, yes. When the sap is running, when the nights get cool but the days are getting a little warmer, that sap is going to start running. And I collected about 6 gallons of birch sap. Now if you're going to make birch syrup, for maple syrup it's 40-1. So you get 40 gallons and have to boil that down to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. Birch is 100-1. So it's a lot of birch water. As a matter of fact, my herbal company is called Birchwater Farms because birch water is very pure. So I wanted to have that connotation to a very pure herb. I harvest almost all of my herbs out of 200 or so that I work with. Only the ones that I will order or buy is the ones I can't grow myself or harvest in my area. I travel about 8 or 9 different states teaching, and there are some things that grow in other areas better than they grow in mine. But if I can't grow it, I tend to not use it except for just a handful of things. So, all right, a syrup. We're going to make a hickory bark syrup. We've got shag bark here. Other hickories will work just as well. This one has a high amount of magnesium in it, so that's why, and shagbark just has a flavor that the other ones just don't have. One of the trees in my backyard is called a pig nut. It's got a little nose on the hickory nut. You can take the green hull off of those and break those. Hickory nuts are hard, by the way. You can break those hickory nuts up and boil them, and that water makes a very fragrant, very flavorful tea that has a lot of magnesium in it. Shagbark hickory has magnesium as well. But you can see this, the way this is, it will peel off of the tree. Like if this is the trunk, it will actually peel off of the tree, and you can get these peeled bark, and it's actually the outer bark that you're using in this case. Now this one is covered with lichen. Lichen itself is medicinal. However, under this might be debris that we would just want to go ahead and clean off. So we're going to scrub this clean, and then roast it to give it a richer flavor. And it actually does bring out more of the magnesium when it's roasted. There was a question earlier about roasting dandelions. Dandelions are flavorful when roasted, but it actually does bring out some medicinal value when they're roasted. That's not to say they're not highly medicinal not roasted. So if you have some that's not roasted, that's fine. But I just tend to roast them when I can. So we're going to make hickory bark syrup. What we're going to do is make a tea, a strong tea, and then we're going to boil that down with our sweetener and to make a tea. Now when I say, or to make a syrup, syrups don't have to be pancake syrup thick. Those are usually a corn syrup based syrup. My syrups and the syrup we had earlier is not thick. It's a little thicker than a tea, and that's because we use less sweetener. I find that I don't have to have that highly sweet. I want more flavor, so I can use more of the product, but still not getting as much sugar. So I tend to use half as much sugar as I need to make it thick. And when you boil that down to like if anybody's familiar with candy stage or syrup stage, reaches a certain point, a certain temperature, it'll start thickening up. And if you were going to make candy or like lozenges with any of that, cherry lozenges are great, but it's a process to make those. You have to get them really hot and boil them for quite a while. So we decided not to make lozenges today. I encourage you to learn that technique, because there's a lot of herbs you can make a lozenge or a gummy bear, anything like that. So another one that we're going to do is when you make a decoction, and we're going to use yellow dock root. We're basically going to make an elixir, which is a sweetened tea, but we're going to turn this into a decoction, and that means we're going to make it stronger. We're going to simmer it down till it reduces a little bit. But we're also going to add some of our other herbs in there as well. Yellow dock, very good for liver. The doctrine of signatures on that, which means the plant will remind you of a certain part of the body. The root is very yellow, so that is the same color as bile in the gallbladder and liver. If you have had your gallbladder removed, I strongly urge you to get in the habit of taking something bitter before your meals. If you have trouble digesting fat, they'll tell you that you don't need your gallbladder, but what they don't tell you is the gallbladder, that bile that comes out of the gallbladder and the liver, is what helps you digest fat. And our body needs fat. Brain is made up of fat and cholesterol. And I'm talking about good fats. Unfortunately, our food now has been adulterated, so it's hard to find a good fat unless you're getting it farm raised and you know the grower, know what they're feeding the animal. The yellow dock, burdock, those type roots will help your body to process fat, to process your food, to draw the nutrients out of those foods, because we are highly undernourished in this country. Burdock is wonderful, and yellow dock is wonderful for helping you to absorb more nutrients. We're also going to make a tincture, and that's going to be barberry, which is the gram-positive and gram-negative antiviral antibiotic. So if you've heard of strep, staph, things like that, I have seen the berberine along with some other herbs pull out a MRSA. As a matter of fact, I have a friend who had a melanoma here, and I mean, they had to cut because melanoma will follow the fascia of the. Have you ever seen someone have just a little spot and they just have to take off half their face, it seems like, to get all of it out, or they just make a very long scar for one spot? Well, that melanoma followed the fascia of the muscle, and they had to make, for that one place, they had to make about an 8-inch incision. And after 2-3 weeks, he texted me and said, little tiny bubbles. I'm like, what? He sent a picture, and sure enough, that scar was very red and there were little bubbles on it, and that's very indicative of MRSA. I took him yellow dock, yellow root, which is a berberine. I took barberry, yarrow, and 2 or 3 other things in a concoction, and also told him to do this in multiple layers. Take it internally, put a bandage on, keep it soaked in this solution, drip it on. 3 days, the bubbles were gone. It was a very good blend for MRSA, and part of that is the berberine. I'm not saying it cured him because he was on a medication as well. I don't make claims that it cures anything. It was gone in 3 days. And the doctor had said it would be difficult to get rid of. So you take it from there. We're also going to make a toothpaste. This is a tooth powder that we're going to make today, but if you want to make it into a paste, you can add coconut oil to it. Coconut oil has a lower melting point, which means it's going to be solid most of the time. So you can add coconut, and coconut oil is actually antiseptic as well to help cleanse your mouth. But this toothpaste, or this tooth powder, has barberry. We're going to use the barberry, baking powder, salt, and then to flavor it, to make it sweeter and more palatable, we're going to put some xylitol in it. Xylitol will actually help with tooth decay. So I use xylitol quite often. Also, we have a salve going, plantain and violet. Both of those can be found in the wintertime, and those are just a wonderful addition to our winter apothecary. We'll turn that salve into lip balm, and it's violet's just wonderful for lips. Violet's also great for bruising. I add violet with daisy in the summertime, so I make my daisy oil in the summertime, my violet oil in the fall or very early spring. It's actually in our area, they'll still come up in the wintertime, and you can use the leaves or the flowers for that. So that's a year-round oil that I add together for a really good bruise oil. But as violet and plantain, it's going to help with chapped lips all winter. You can actually rub it on to cuticles, and when your hands are just scuffed and rough after working outside without gloves maybe, or they just feel like you almost got frostbite and then your hands are tingly, you can rub that on your knuckles and use that salve. Also, we're going to do a comfrey root poultice and talk about how that happens. What that will do will help draw out impurities. It'll help draw out, it's also called knit bone. You want to be very careful if you're going to use it on a broken bone because it will heal very quickly. You want to make sure that bone is set correctly. It'll pull out things as well, but it's just a wonderful healing plant. Now, I do have a couple of caveats. We talked about sassafras. Sassafras has saffron oil in it. This is comfrey, by the way. I forgot to show you what that looks like. Comfrey is a wonderful herb that, yes, it's wonderful healing. The mucilagin, it is slimy. You can use it for multiple different things. It's emollient if it's on your skin. It's mucilaginous if it's inside. But talking about sassafras, there is a caveat on using sassafras. There is saffron oil in it, and they have found saffron oil to be carcinogenic. Now, that poor little rat was fed 4 gallons a day, the equivalent of 4 gallons a day, and all of a sudden he developed a tumor. So you take it for what it's worth. And coinkadinkly, there was back in the day in the 70s when they did this study, about the only thing people drank soda-wise was root beer. There was Coca-Cola and root beer. There wasn't Mountain Dew and all these other things. So root beer was very popular. Well, they came out with an artificial root beer flavoring. At the exact same time, they found out that saffron was carcinogenic. So you take it from that. Purely coinkydink, I'm sure. So, but anyway, I do have to give you a caveat on sassafras, that some people, if you're going to drink 4 gallons a day, you might develop a tumor. Also on the comfrey, the caveat on comfrey is be careful with it. You don't want to put it on a deep wound because it can heal over on the top, and I know that firsthand. I had a cut here, and actually it was so deep it messed up my nail bed. And what I do, I put a bandage on and started dripping comfrey, and it healed all the way around it and did not heal underneath first. And it stayed puffy and very sore for almost a year, healing on the inside because it had healed. And I thought for a point I was going to have it lanced.
You should have soaked it in yarrow.
Yeah, that I was using. After that, I used yarrow, I used plantain, I kept it moist, I kept lots of herbs on it, but it took quite a while for that to heal up on the inside. I just cut it down to my knuckle. I just basically filleted over. Sorry, I know that sounds terrible, but 2 things I never do. I put glass in the top of my trash can, and I came back 30 minutes later and pushed my trash down with my hand. So distraction, it's a killer. All right, so that's one thing. We didn't talk about Usnea, but I don't even see it on there. Oh, we were going to make a powder. I kind of missed glossed right over powder. Usnea has a styptic quality, just like yarrow. So you can take and grind this. If you've never seen Usnea, when this is dried, but when it's fresh, you can take a strand of it, and if you pull it very gently, I could wet this and it'll do it a little bit. If you pull this very gently, it'll have a white core and it'll look like an elastic core. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but y'all may be able to see that core there. But you'll know that as opposed to, say, Spanish moss, which will have a black core. There are some other lichens that will look fuzzy that are not Usnea. Usnea is the botanical name, by the way. But this is styptic. It's highly, it's gram positive, I believe it is. Maybe gram negative. I always get those 2 backwards. But it'll work. This is, I believe, the one that's gram positive and gram negative. I know yellow root is, and I'm pretty sure Usnea is as well. Just off the top of my head, I forgot. But this is a wonderful healer. You can use that for a tinder if you had plenty of it, but I see people burning it and I'm like, no, that's medicine. So, but this is a wonderful healer, and it's soft. But you can powder this up, grind it up, and we're going to make a powder to keep in your, like in your foraging bag in case you get a cut that won't stop bleeding. You can just sprinkle that very fine powder over it to stop the bleeding, and then clean it when you get home. So. All right, that is quite a few things we're going to make here shortly, and I encourage you to go home and study these one at a time, find out all you can about the plants, make your own materia medica, that's your notes, get in a process of putting information on the page in the same way. Every page, the way I do it, it'll have my title, my botanical name. The family is very important because, just like I said earlier on yellow root, there's 2 or 3 plants called yellow root, queen of the meadow. There's at least 4 plants that I'm familiar with that are called queen of the meadow. Rabbit tobacco and mullein. By the way, that we do have mullein here. If you're not familiar with mullein, it's a wonderful cough medicine for your winter apothecary. I strongly urge you, you can find the leaves now. I strongly urge you to learn that plant. And rabbit tobacco and boneset as well are 2 wonderful plants for cough. So, but go home and learn your materia medica, write your botanical name, your family name, your identification in the same place so that you know, and then you can start listing properties and the things you can do with it. I have a materia medica download on my website, Simple Homestead Living, to help you, and you get the one, and then you can do for as many plants as you would like, just repeatedly print it out. And it's very intense. It goes into constituents, goes into properties, it goes into actions of the herb. And those are not things you might find out in the first day that you start studying, but the next time you study, or once you get aware that, oh, this has vitamin C, you begin to associate. This has berberine, you begin to associate those plants. Flavonoids, things like that. So I encourage you to learn these plants as you go, continue learning them, and enjoy the process.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. I wanted to say one more thing about her presentation just now. Plants are like friends. You all just met each other, and you learned a little bit about each other, but there is so much to know about Tara and Heather, and there's a depth. So basically, we just introduced you to some of our friends, but you only heard a little bit, and it probably went over your head. But the more you spend time together, like the time we spend together is just so precious to me. And the more time you spend with the plants, especially eating them, because that's my thing, and making medicine and stuff, it gives you stories to tell and experiences that bond you and knit you to them and remind you to worship the one who created them. So thank you so much
Wonderful.
for what you shared.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Enjoyed it.